Thanks for joining me, guys. In this one we're going to model a very simple ice cream cone. We're going to start by deleting the default sphere. We're going to go to our scene menu. We're going to add in a cylinder. This is going to be the base for our wafer cone. Once we've got our cylinder in the scene, we're going to use the green dots on the cylinder and the orange dots to adjust both the radius of the cylinder and the height of it. The orange will adjust the radius, which will allow us to create a tapered cone, and the green dots will adjust the height. So we're going to bring the top orange out, the bottom orange in a little bit. We're just looking for a cone shape. Again, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no right or wrong. We're just looking for something that looks cone shaped. Until we're happy with it, then we'll move on to the next stage. So I'm just making micro adjustments to the radius. Once we're happy, we can move on to the next phase, and we're going to bring another cylinder into the scene. Again, we're going to use the green and orange dots to adjust this. This is going to be the top of our cone. If you want to search waffle cone or ice cream cone for some references on Google Images or your browser of choice, go right ahead. But here I am, just looking to find that shape, find that form, or what I'm happy with. Again, we're not going to validate these primitives, so we can always adjust at any point during this stage. I've duplicated the bottom cylinder, and I'm just going to bring that up, and this is going to be our connection to the top portion. Using the gizmo tool to put it in position. I want sort of a nice transition from the bottom cylinder to the top cylinder, but again, it's not imperative that these look any way, because we're going to cover all this up essentially at some point with the waffle pattern. So again, I'm just placing that cloned cylinder into position. Once we're happy with the position, I'm going to trim this up so it sort of joins and we don't have such an overlap into the top cylinder. Again, just adjusting these pieces until I'm happy with the overall look. Nothing's set in stone. Anything we do, we can undo. We're working in a digital medium, so it's not critical. Here you see I'm just trimming that top portion of the cloned cylinder, and now I've got a nice transition from the bottom cylinder to the top cylinder. Again, I can just make micro adjustments on either of these just till I get it to where I think it looks good. I'm just going to keep playing about, look at it from a couple of different angles. But yeah, this is all entirely up to you. Again, there's no math, there's no actual measurements or dimensions for these things. There are lots of different variations of ice cream cones. Again, just continuing to play. I'll probably spend a little bit more time on this than necessary, but there we go. I think I'm happy. So I'm going to add a torus in now, and this is going to be one of our rings on the cones, one of our decorative rings. So I brought the torus in. I'm just going to use the gizmo to put it into position, and this is going to cover up that join from our clone cylinder to the top cylinder. Just adjusting the height, adjusting the overall size. Again, nothing crazy, just using the gizmo tool. And once I'm happy with that position, I'll clone that, again using the gizmo tool, and I'm going to bring the clone up to the top to form the top rim of the cone. Again, just putting that in position, making it look what I think looks good. And once I'm happy with that, we can move on to the next step. Again, there's nothing set in stone at this stage. We can make minor adjustments to our cone, make it look how we want. And when we're happy with our basic form, then we're going to move on to the pattern on the cone. And for that, I'm going to add a cylinder in from the scene menu. And we're going to use cylinders and torus to form the waffle pattern around our cone. So I'm going to bring a cylinder in, I'm just going to change the camera to the left, but I'm going to use the gizmo to bring the cylinder to the front of the cone, and just use the gizmo tool to increase the length. And I'm going to change the angle also to match the angle of the cone, because we want our pattern to form around the cone. And I'm just looking from all sides just to look at what sort of scale the pattern or the start of the pattern is to the rest of the cone. And here I am just changing the angle using the red circle within the gizmo tool just to try and match the angle of the cone. I'm going to give it a little bit more height. Again, it's not set in stone. You can use this sort of basic method to design your pattern in any way. I'm also going to provide some more tutorials after this to do different patterns to your waffle cone and add some extra flair to your ice creams. But yeah, I'm just positioning this into the bottom of the cone. Again, this is going to start to form the basis of our waffle pattern on the cone, all just using the gizmo tool. Once I'm happy with the position and the size, the scale of it, again, I just look from a couple of different angles till I've got the form that I'm looking for. And once I'm happy, I'm going to go to the scene menu, and we're going to use a repeater function. Again, you just want to get your first cylinder right, and I'm going to add, actually in fact I'm going to rename this to cone pattern, just so I can keep on top of what's what. I'm not too worried about everything else at this stage. I'll quickly save it. Now to this cylinder that's the form of our cone pattern, I'm going to add a repeater, and this repeater, I'm just renaming this. I'm just calling our main body cone main. So yeah, we'll get back to the repeater side of things now. Now I'm going to add a repeater. So I'm going to go add repeaters and radial. What will occur? This will produce a radial pattern around our cone. And on our radial toolbar at the top, we can adjust the amount of cylinders within that pattern by increasing the number. And you can type that number in, or you can just put your pen on that number and drag it to the right or to the left to increase or decrease. I think I'm going to go with 12. I think 12 looks like a pretty normal ice cream cone. Then I'm going to validate and keep instances. We're not really going to do many adjustments to it, but we'll keep instances at this stage. To form the second part of the pattern, we're going to use torus, which will give us our horizontal part of the pattern. I'm going to go to the scene menu, add torus, and I'm going to use the gizmo tool, just position this where I want it. Scaling it down and moving it until I'm happy with the position. Once I'm happy with that base position, again, we can just keep adjusting. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Everybody will have their own preference on how they want their cone to look and what they think looks good, etc. But once I'm happy with that position, to that torus, I'm going to rename it to cone pattern 2. Again, just so I can keep track of what's what as we start adding more and more objects. This is a really basic tutorial. I'm just keeping it very simple, building the entire thing up with just primitives. So now we've got our horizontal part of the waffle pattern. Cone pattern 2, we are going to add again another repeater to that. We're going to use the curve repeater. Now the curve repeater will increase or add primitives along an axis and allow us to create patterns along an axis. By default the count is 2, and I'm going to set grid on, because what grid allows me to do is keep everything snapped centrally. So as I move things now with that upper, I've got to turn snap off on the curved toolbar, otherwise the curve will snap to the model. So I'm going to turn snap off, and now anywhere I move with grid on, it will remain snapped to the grid, so it'll allow me to keep central within the scene, which is very important in a lot of cases. I'm going to click radius till I've got 2 radius, and that's going to allow me to change the width of this curve pattern and adjust both these cylinders, or these torus, in this pattern. So here we go. So I'm just going to adjust this again and just demonstrate it again. If we leave snap on, it will snap to the model, but if we turn snap off, it sounds counterintuitive, but it will snap to the grid as long as grid's on and you are snapped to a face. So in my pattern, I think I go for around 4, a count of 4. And again, when you adjust your radius while grid is on, it will still snap, so it's much harder to make micro adjustments. So once you've got everything set in the middle with the grid on, you can turn the grid off and make adjustments to your radius. Otherwise you will only ever be able to snap to those grid lines. So now, using the radius function, once I turn grid off, I can make micro adjustments Again, I'm just positioning this where I want the pattern to be, where I think it looks good. You see, it's much more difficult with the grid on to make micro adjustments. We can do that much easier with it off. I'm just trying to make those all look uniform within the pattern. Once you're happy with the position, if you've got any extraneous ends that pop out of your pattern, you can use the trim tool to just trim those off and make it look neater. Again, I'll continue to adjust this pattern until I'm happy with it. Just using Gizmo again to just shrink it down, just till I find that sweet spot where I think it looks good, it looks natural. And again, I can use the trim tool at any point if I need to make adjustments to parts of a mesh from another body that's still sticking out, or making things look a little bit messy. So I'm kind of happy at this point with how it looks. Again, I'm going to use that trim tool to just take out those bits from the other pattern that are sort of protruding through the horizontal torus. A quick save. I personally have auto save turned off, so I like to save manually. Again, I'm just going to trim those bottoms of the vertical cone pattern, and at that stage I think I'm quite happy. As my poor editing, I'm just going to trim those off again. And again, I think it looks pretty good. I can make some adjustments here and there. At this stage everything's still separate, so making adjustments is real simple. I'm just changing the scale of that top ring, I'm just making it look how I want it to look for the finished product. Now, I'm not too worried about making the cone hollow at this stage. Now from the scene menu, I'm just joining the curve repeater to the primitive, and then I'm going to join the two cone patterns together using the Boolean operation. So now both those cone patterns are one mesh that I can move and adjust as one thing. Again, I'm quite happy with how it was, but I'm just looking as I change the scale as to how it looks otherwise, but again, I'm fairly content with how it looks. Again, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no wrong way to do this. You make your cone look how you think looks the best, just using these basic techniques. And again, we're not going to make this cone hollow at this stage because this is purely for decoration and for learning techniques. Now, I'm happy with how the cone looks. I don't need any more resolution because cones are quite blocky anyway. So I'm just going to select all the parts in our scene and I'm going to use the Boolean function. And now the cone is all one piece. And again, I think keeping it quite low resolution adds to the texture of the cone. At this point, we're going to work on our ice cream swirl. So again, I'm going to turn the grid on because we're going to use the tube function, and I want everything to stay quite central for the time being. So we're going to add a tube from the primitive menu. We're going to bring that up and we're going to use the gizmo to adjust to the size that we require. If you saw there, I hit the little swirl just below the tube toolbar next to the gizmo, and that allows me to increase the height of the tube. Then I'm going to hit radius. We only want 2 radius in this for the time being because we've only got 2 points. But we're going to hit profile, and this is going to change the profile of our tube to a square object, which might seem weird at this point for an ice cream. I'm going to use the top radius function to taper because ice cream tapers to a point. So we're going to create our point using that radius at the top. Then I'm going to add in a point in the middle. Just by clicking on that line, I can add more points within that tube tool. And these are called spline points, and these are going to allow me to make adjustments for both radius and the profile and the shape of the tube. Again, I'm just trying to make this look natural in terms of extruded ice cream. When you go to the ice cream man, you get a nice swirly curve ice cream. And what we're going to use is the twist function. And we can add a twist. If we click it 3 times, we'll add a twist to each spline point, but we only want 2 twists. So we're just going to click twist so it's got 2 things active. Then we're going to use the bottom one to twist it and add spirals into our ice cream. Now I'm going to increase the division just by dragging my pen across on division, just to create a smoother base, a smoother mesh to work upon once we're happy with our shape. Again, you can use these spline points to change. You can use the radius to make it a little bit fatter in the center, twist it a little bit more if you want more spirals, and adjust the top to make it look a bit more natural. And yeah, just making micro adjustments to make this ice cream look as natural as we can possibly make it. My division's at 85 there. Again, it's just give us a little bit of smoothness, which is going to help massively when it comes to the next stage. And once you're happy with this, I've actually increased it a little bit there. So I've gone up to 115. And once you're happy with the shape, you can hit validate. And now we're going to use the smooth tool. I'm going to bring the intensity down a little bit. I've still got symmetry on here, but you're going to want to turn off symmetry for your smooth tool. And I'm gonna, on the sharp edges around the ice cream spiral, I'm just gonna use a smooth tool to soften those edges up. Again, just make it more natural, make it more ice cream looking, like it's been extruded out of an ice cream machine. And just taking those sharp edges back all the way around, making sure I don't miss any sharp edges. And just making that ice cream look really smooth and natural. Not going too crazy. I don't want to affect too much of the main body of the ice cream either, just the sharp edges all the way around. Just rotating, smoothing gently. And we're going to keep doing that. Again, this is quite therapeutic, I think. As you go around the ice cream, just smoothing those edges off. And it really starts to look like nice and soft. It makes me crave ice cream, in fact. So yeah, just keep on smoothing those, panning around with the camera to make sure we've not missed any edges. I'm going to smooth that tip a little bit. Again, you can change your radius and your intensity to suit. If you find it smoothing a little bit too much, just drop your intensity down a little bit. Yeah, we're just looking to take all those sharp edges off. Working all the way around the ice cream. And before you know it, that's pretty much it. Again, we're just going to keep working around the ice cream, just make sure we've got all those sharp edges. I can see I've missed a couple here as I pan round. Just making it really soft on those edges. I take a pan out and just have a look around the model and see what I think. And now I'm just going to use the move tool just to create some sort of more natural feel to the ice cream, as it's not going to be perfect when extruded out of a machine. So I can just use that move tool to just slightly move those twists. And once you're happy with it, you can use multi-res to subdivide the ice cream, which is going to give you a nice smooth surface for painting. Now I'm going to switch over in the shading menu to lit PBR, and I'm going to go to the paint menu on the top right. The material, I'm going to use plastic. I'm going to start off with the white plastic base, and we're just going to look for a colour for our ice cream. I'm going to keep my roughness quite low, because I don't want this to be matte. I want it to be a little shine to it. Metalness is going to be at 0, and I'm just going to look for a colour ice cream, and in this case I'm going for a nice pink, a nice soft pink ice cream. Maybe it's strawberry or raspberry, and I'm just going to hit paint all. Then I'm going to click the cone, quick save, and we're going to do the same. We're going to go to the paint menu, white plastic again as our base, and I'm going to look, using the colour bar, I'm going to look for a waffly or an ice cream cone, a wafer cone colour. Tend to be like sandy, sort of light caramel in colour. Once I'm happy with the colour, hit paint all, and that's it. Really as simple as that. Play with the lighting, the environment. If you want to get a render, I'm going to turn post processing on. I'm going to turn ambient occlusion off because it's added these shadows in. But yeah, you can have a play about now, changing your environment. You could add some lights in, you could maybe add a background in if you want to theme it and get a nice screenshot. But that's it, guys. Very simple, very easy ice cream, made very simply, just using primitives. I hope you managed to follow along. If you've got any critiques, feel free to drop it down in the comments. Please subscribe because there will be more tutorials. Thank you for joining. If you make this model, please tag me on social media at 3dim Sculpts, and we'll see you in the next one.